So, hello everyone. Thank you being available on this impromptu webcast. JB was gracious enough to allow me to come over and talk to him and pull together Alan, and hopefully Ray shows up in a sec. But in the past few weeks, so last week I was up in Redmond. I was talking to Jared about what's going on with SharePoint 2012, and social was a big part of the conversation.
Right.
And then the other day I had a webcast with Joel, Spence Harbar, a couple of community leaders. What's going on? Can you hear me? Oh, he's waiting.
I can hear you.
Okay, so a couple of community leaders, and again, social kept creeping up.
Right.
So it sounds like the momentum and the wave of enterprise social is happening already. So, guys, if you don't know JB Holston is the CEO of NewsGator. Yeah. And Alan, why don't you quickly introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. My name's Alan Lepofsky. I'm a Vice President and Principal Analyst at Constellation Research, covering the enterprise social collaboration market, social business, C2O, whatever you want to call it.
Very good. So let's get to it. So, Alan, I'm going to hit you up first. Can you tell everybody what enterprise social is? I mean, it's a big buzzword. I mean, some people might think about Facebook or LinkedIn, but what is enterprise social? How does social work within the confines of organizations?
Okay, very, very easy. So there's two ways people talk about enterprise social. The first is the external sort of social media, brand awareness, engaging with your customers and things like that. That's not what we're going to focus on. I like the other side of it, the internal. How do employees work better together? What collaboration tools do they use? How can they openly share? You know, a lot of people like to break it down to, moving beyond the last generation of tools we had, like instant messaging and email, which were very sort of one-to-one, or even if they're end-to-end, they're very specific, targeted, where social lets you collaborate or talk with everybody inside your organization. So social business tools, things that allow people to share openly, participate, benefit from the knowledge, integrate tools across silos, all of those types of things.
So with that idea, better communicate internally. JB, how is that different from email or picking up a phone?
Well, I think a number of things. First, I think email and phone are channels that are useful channels in this new world that we're moving to. They haven't gone away. Although, as my son says, when he picks up his phone, you can talk with this thing.
Yeah, that's right.
So I mean, as we're making this shift, if you think about a lot of it stems, obviously, it's the consumerization of IT, and a lot of it stems from what folks are doing in their lives as consumers. And,
sure.
Increasingly in your life as a consumer, you're networking with people online all the time,
right?
And you're doing that through a multiplicity of parallel channels, right? So you may be doing chat, you have your social networks running, you've got texting as well. The phone may be a bit less, email certainly a bit less too, but you've got them all sort of there, and you can use all of them. And you as an individual sort of want them all immediately accessible to connect with whomever or whatever is most useful at that point in time for whatever it is that you're trying to do. And so, there's a lot of talk about whether this kind of phenomenon is going to replace email. And, there's data that's come out. I mean, Gartner's come out and made some forecasts as to how much substitution for email this kind of technology is going to provide. And I think you're seeing some of that, but at the moment they're quite complementary, right?
Sure.
So the ability for a system like an enterprise social networking system to let folks know what activities happen over the course of a day, and then let folks interact back with that activity directly from an email, it's really good. Because for some folks, that's still a primary paradigm for interactivity. So they're all part of the party, but I think you're seeing a pretty dramatic substitution in terms of where people are spending their time and attention.
A key word you said is consumerization of IT. So, Alan, going back to you, so when we think about enterprise social, better communicate, just in time, fast to market. So I guess it goes beyond your traditional computers, your PCs. Now we're talking about phones. You're talking about tablet devices, right?
Absolutely.
What are you seeing around that, Alan, enterprise social with respect to other types of devices in the enterprise?
So probably the biggest change, whether it's because it's social or just because of the year we're at and the way the devices have changed, is that mobile isn't a secondary feature anymore. It's not we built something and then let's put some time into having a mobile client. Mobile, in many ways, either has to be equal to your full experience, or in some products and some features is only. It's the first class is it in, and maybe there's a web version of it. So things like when you're on your phone, having access to the phone's calendar, sorry, not calendar, a camera, I apologize, is a huge plus that you don't have when you're tethered to your desk. So in social environments where you're either, like, say things like a doctor or a researcher or an insurance agent, or anytime you're out in the field and it's visual and you need to communicate that information back to people, being on a mobile device, having a camera, having GPS location, having real-time access, those are all huge components of what you can do in collaboration that you can't do with email sitting at your desk, etc.
Now, the way you describe that is pretty much obviously coming from the SharePoint world, kind of segueing to that conversation. A lot of those capabilities are built in to SharePoint as a platform.
Right.
And I think that's why it's uniquely positioned, and also given a lot of organizations are Microsoft-based organizations, a lot of the tenets and the foundational aspects are already there.
Yeah. Certainly from NewsGator's point of view, that's a bet that we took fundamentally. Our view was, look, SharePoint's pretty ubiquitous. It's a really critical platform for document storage, document management, for the world of collaboration that was document-centric.
Right.
And so if we couldn't leverage that for our customers, there are a whole bunch of benefits, right? There are things that the Microsoft stack is doing for us that we didn't want to have to compete with or replicate. Sure. Search, a single profile,
right? Data
storage,
authentication,
yeah. a lot of things like that. They're really critical as these issues, as the opportunity becomes enterprise class, as
right.
it moves from departmental or work group or whatever it may be to a truly enterprise class sort of thing. So that was a big part of it. And I think the other thing for us is that, we sort of look at Microsoft, and obviously we're a really close partner with those guys, but as a creator of these great platforms for enterprises, of which SharePoint is one, and it does a lot over time to continue to enhance those, and then has a tremendous sales and marketing machine to ensure that everyone's got those, such that it creates this great base, this great platform on which you can innovate and on which you can deliver a lot of interesting things. And for us, what's been great is that we move at a pace in this consumerization world that you've got to move in order to keep up with what the end user expects.
Absolutely.
Microsoft delivers these fundamental platforms, gets them out there, gets everyone using them, and then we can leverage those. I think going forward, what's interesting too, of course, then to talk about is, the definition of those platforms and the number of those platforms is increasing, right? So, it's increasingly not just SharePoint; it's
Absolutely.
Office 365, right? You got Azure coming up,
right?
You've got Link, right? You've got a Skype.
Sure. Let me get Ray here. Go ahead.
Right. Speaking of Skype, that was a perfect segue.
That's right. Let's call Mr. Ray here.
Hello, Ray.
Fashionably late, but that's fine.
He may be calling from another planet. Who knows where Ray is?
I don't know where Ray is. He's always late. You there?
I'm here. How are you?
Turn on your camera. So going back to your point, we're talking about social. SharePoint is a social platform in the enterprise. I think another benefit is, aside from SharePoint as a platform, it integrates nicely with existing tools. No matter people might think how low tech it is, Office, Windows, and again, it's ubiquitous in the enterprise.
Right. Yeah, I think one of the things that's interesting for us, if you think about where all this is going to go, and I'll be interested in, Alan and Ray's thoughts too, but I think increasingly the problem is going to become cutting through the noise.
Right.
It's going to be more a matter of, it's not just a matter of liberating all this interactivity and all this unstructured kind of interactivity. Sure. It's taking all of that and all of the artifacts that you're having that interaction around, whether it's a document or a PowerPoint or whatever it may be, and then just presenting sort of the right interaction with the right individual to someone while they're doing some work, right?
Correct.
While they're doing a project or whatever else it may be. And we think that relying on the platform capabilities that are necessary to be able to do all that really well are really important, right?
Sure.
So if you think about like indexing unstructured metadata, right? That's a pain, and searching it across that in an appropriate way.
And past that, integrating with other data sources too.
Right. Yeah. So, but ultimately, I think that's where this is going to go, and because I think fundamentally, at a higher level, just to step back, I think our view is this just becomes fabric. Ultimately, you've just got this social kind of capability, which is accessible to everyone. Internal, ultimately external as well. And allowing for them to do the right kind of work at the right point with the right individual.
Right. So, Ray, if your camera's not turned on, feel free to turn it on. Alan, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts around SharePoint as this social platform, and how does it stack up against similar technologies or similar platforms out there?
Okay, so the industry is filled with lots of different vendors in the space. You have the two big software houses. You've got Microsoft with the SharePoint world, and you've got IBM with their connections platforms, sort of at the high end level as far as implementation, existing customer bases, et cetera. Very full featured, but they're big platforms. They either involve large on premises installs, or and they do have some hosted offerings as well. But then you have other players, call them the sort of social business or E2O players that are companies like Jive and Moxie
Sure.
and Social Text. You have niche vendors doing things like Yammer and Podio and Socialcast, and even companies like Box, involved on very specific feature fronts that augment and add to these platforms. The Microsoft platform's obviously a good choice for companies that are very fully invested in Microsoft technologies. You mentioned earlier things like the Active Directory for sign-ons, or they're using Office documents to already create their
Right.
content. Um, the issues customers have found, to be quite honest, though, when they come to me and they ask about these environments, are things like Microsoft's ability to, quickly add features to the product, and that's where wonderful third parties like JB and NewsGator, are able to use SharePoint as a platform, but augment it at a quicker pace than Microsoft themselves is able to put out. So instead of going from a 2010 version to a 2012 or 2013 version, NewsGator and others are able to add new features onto that platform and leverage it, like you said, the searching and the indexing and the security, etc. But I think customers have to understand that Microsoft itself or SharePoint itself isn't going to always be releasing new versions or be as cutting edge as maybe the newest greatest thing of the
I
day.
think I think Alan, you hit on a great point. There's this stereotype, right? Like you go to organizations as use SharePoint for that, use SharePoint for that. It's like the next big thing, next best thing to sliced bread. But I think it's an intentional product where they made it that it's a platform, and the whole ecosystem would be supporting and growing. In fact, I was telling Jared yesterday, he says there's about, in the ecosystem of partners and ISVs and system integrators, it's like 1,000, at least 1,000 building on top, working around SharePoint.
Yeah, I think that's a big differentiator in amongst the various vendors, that Alan mentioned. I mean, Microsoft's always been, its go-to-market's always been through partners.
Right.
95%. Ballmer said at the Worldwide Partner Conference, 105% in his ineffable way of their revenue comes through partners.
Sure.
And that's always been the way that they've gone about it. So they sort of create platforms. They create platforms that SIs and ISVs can add value to and can make money from, and then that's the world that allows them. They get that out so that everyone's got one of those things. And they've got that ecosystem that can then add value to it, and that's very different from the go-to-market of some of the other folks that Alan mentioned. Right? I mean, IBM is. I think a lot of their pitch, I think, is very service-led. It's very much let us come in and help you on this journey of social business. Right? We'll take you from here to Nirvana over whatever period of time. And by the way, there's technology that comes with that too. Right?
Here's all the consulting you'll need.
Here's all the consulting. Yammer is, obviously he's got a premium model.
Sure.
It's been extremely successful, and then from that they want to convert, and so it's much more a problem. So I think one of the big differentiators in the market at the moment is much more the go-to-market amongst the various players than it is interestingly necessarily the feature function capability. Right, from an end user point of view, if you're in a world of connections versus a world of SharePoint plus NewsGator versus a world of Jive,
absolutely,
to some degree they're not actually all that different. The differences aren't that huge for the end users.
We're talking about Jive and even Yammer. I know they integrate with SharePoint as well, right? So there's connectivity around that. And from an end user perspective, at the end of the day, if it's something seamless and easy for them, it helps get their work done. Yeah,
well, you hit a hot button for me, so I'll just add. I mean, I think there's sort of integration and there's integration. I mean, a lot of our pitch to folks is, look, if you look at the total cost of ownership, given how we've architected, you don't have parallel search that you have to federate. You don't have a separate profile that you have to try to integrate in some fashion. There's a lot of issues if you're truly going to deploy these things at scale, where if you've got a light web part-based integration with a platform like SharePoint, you're going to end up with a whole lot of cost if you truly want to have one sort of single vision of the truth relative to people and the content and all the rest of that stuff. So we those distinctions we think are becoming increasingly important because people are increasingly thinking about this as an enterprise class decision and an enterprise class problem. From an end user point of view, though, they could care less. right? I mean, for them, they don't want to know.
Should
right?
look pretty, right?
Yeah, if I'm on my slate or tablet or iPad, whatever it is, I don't even don't tell me it's SharePoint. I mean, I don't even want to know, right?
Yeah,
I just want to know that I can get my stuff done, and it feels
white label it,
That's right.
rebrand it.
Yeah.
Make it look like your corporate intranet, not like a specific vendor's product.
right.
Well, I mean, that is the big part, right? I mean, we're looking at
Ray's actually there.
people really want to get to functionality. I mean, people are looking for functionality. So what they've got to do is figure out how to take their existing toolkits and build from them, right? And a lot of this is mapping to the right levels. I mean, sometimes you might have a piece here, a piece there to get to where you want to go, and you do the complete upgrade, right? Sometimes you can't even find it, so you completely augment and work around what you have. But we're seeing a lot of that because there isn't one complete solution out there today, and everybody's got a set of use cases that they think they want to do. They start out there, and then they realize, oh, we want to do more. Once they get onto it, right? They'll start with one use case and they get hooked, and then say, hey, I want to do more, and then they realize, hey, there are limitations with one product versus another, and that's what we're seeing a lot more in the market.
By the way, for those watching, if you guys have a question, hashtag is SP Social. Drop it on Twitter. You could send it to either four of us or just through the SP Social hashtag. So Ray, going back to your point, you've traveled around the world. You've met a lot of people. You've met a lot of customers in different industries, a bunch of different vendors. What do you think it would take for Microsoft, specifically SharePoint as a platform, to be successful in this space or to gain more success in this space?
Well, the problem with SharePoint is that it's all things to all people, and so you have to ask people, why did you start with SharePoint? And when you get to that question, then you say, well, where do you want SharePoint to go? And the reason I say it that way is, like, if you want SharePoint to be this collaboration, social business tool, then you realize that, hey, there are some nice components that you can take advantage of. There's some nice things in UC you can take advantage of, but it's not the complete solution, which is why there are all these other solutions that are built on top of SharePoint, or all these other solutions that are integrated back to SharePoint. So for what it would take is for Microsoft to say, look, we're going to support a few, and using Microsoft terminology, we're going to support a few workloads. And these workloads are going to be, for example, internal collaboration in this example, and external communities for this example. And so they have to get down to that specific level and say, we're going to provide all these features, and then other people will build on top of it. We know they will. That's been the history. We've got a great developer community. And then they could be taken more seriously about having an end-to-end social experience. I think they're doing that. I think they're trying to do that, but or they could just partner more heavily with some of the people on this phone call.
There
you go. Like Alan.
So it's more of a use
and NewsGator.
Yeah, so it's more of a use case based type of scenario where it's not just, look, here's a massive blob of tools, go and prosper.
Yes. Take off. Go and prosper.
Yeah. Focused on some very specific use cases is definitely part of it. And I think SharePoint in general has some of the baggage of its heritage that it has to deal with. So yes, Microsoft's doing a great job with Azure and Office 365 and moving to the cloud and things, but it's still kind of thought of as, okay, if you're going with SharePoint, there's a large project involved. There's a lot of consulting. There's a lot of hardware upgrades. There's a lot of installs. And that's, one of the things they have to battle as, when companies are making decisions. Do we want to go with, a nice hosted based solution, or do we want to go with a large platform stack? And one's not right or wrong. There's advantages to both. And there's obviously strengths in building a large infrastructured, platform type of product. But Microsoft needs to get away from that a bit. They need to make upgrades easier. They need to kind of remove some of their rip and replace strategies that they've had in the past, and that's where things like their cloud-based offerings really are going to help and really are going to make a difference.
I would say that's true even if you had IBM, same thing, right? You still have
absolutely. It's not unique to Microsoft at all.
But what Microsoft has an opportunity to do is they've got a great partner network, and if they would start helping partners productize some of those capabilities, it would actually accelerate the ability to improve SharePoint if they want to move in that direction. So by taking some of the partner code, buying it back, reselling it, putting it back into the base, and then allowing partners to then go out and do more deeper specialization, right? Because what you need to do in collaboration for a plant floor is very different for professional services, very different in a healthcare setting, and very different, of course, in a public sector. And those are things, not one company, even as large as Microsoft, they can't deliver all that capability.
I think those are great points. I think the other thing the other observation I'd make is I think that, Microsoft, I think is working really hard to spread the installed base for technologies like SharePoint, right? I mean, I think a lot of, if you think about what Office 365 is all about, I think that's a lot of where it's trying to go. And I think, as they, and I have no doubt they'll succeed. And I think as that occurs, some of the things we were just talking about get addressed, and then it gets interesting to talk about different segments, right?
Right.
And not just necessarily by use case, but by size of entity.
That's true.
Right.
Yeah.
Because there are certain sort of sizes of entities, whether they're work groups, departments, or organizations, for which one delivery model with more focused or limited use cases potentially are really valuable. And then there are larger organizations that think of all these things just as platforms on which they're going to do more stuff, whatever that means.
Right.
So I think it'll be interesting to see as the market continues to develop how that segmentation plays out. The different go-to-markets for entities like Microsoft or others relative to the size of entity.
Yeah, even with Office 365, I mean, with a lot of customers we talk to, Office 365, at least for now, it's not something for them that they would jump onto right away. It's a great pitch for small businesses and medium-scale enterprises. But for a true enterprise, even just to do a hybrid type of scenario, it's still not there.
Yeah, no, but again, I think the history of Microsoft, from my point of view, at any rate, is once they put their heads towards something, ultimately they're gonna make a lot of progress against that. And I'm certainly it's going to be the case with Office 365 and Azure. I mean, Azure is the biggest investment they've ever made. It's always striking to me because it's so capital intensive. Right. It's not another 1,000 developers like SharePoint. It's like a whole bunch of places where you got to have hardware running.
Exactly.
It's the biggest investment they've ever made, and they'll be tough in that realm.
Right.
But doing all that all at once,
right,
and also competing with Bing and Xbox and everything else they're doing, it's non-trivial. That's for
Windows 8, the phone, all that.
Yeah.
Well,
I think there's a misconception that Microsoft equals Windows as well. When you're talking about these different platform methods. So things like OneNote, recently have introduced an iPad version, and just this week an Android version. So, unfortunately, to offend your viewers, I'm an Evernote user, not a OneNote user. But I did see that OneNote is now available on Android, so that makes it so that I can actually take a look at it now. I didn't choose Evernote over OneNote because I didn't want to use Microsoft. I chose it because it was available on my platform. And now that, as an Android user, OneNote is available, well, that adds an option for me. So as JB says, delivery methods and delivery, platforms, that's a huge thing that I think there's a misconception about with Microsoft.
And also, I want to go back to what Ray said earlier about growing this ecosystem more, or partners more. In Office 365, they have a marketplace. But I suspect, like what JB says, that there's going to be more of a big push for that and have more partners to be involved.
Yeah, when you look at the Azure marketplace, it's only going to grow. There's some interesting services. So I think with the evolution of Azure, you're going to see much more of a focus on how to get partners to have an easier way to go to market. The only challenge that's happening right now is that customers are moving so quickly to make their decisions.
I agree with that.
And that's really what's hampering them, is the speed to market.
Well, I think that's where. From our point of view, that's been a good thing, obviously, because it means that we can work in very tight conjunction with the Microsoft field.
Right.
And they're good at that. I think it's you have to know how to work with them well as a partner. But if you happen to be in a position where they see a real benefit for them in competitive hot situations, there's a lot of leverage that's possible as well.
Now, just kind of...
Yeah, and they're starting to... Oh, I'm sorry.
I was going to kind of jump off of that topic quickly. I just want to get your take and Alan's take. In this kind of global economy we're in, obviously every investment organizations make are looked upon. And do you think the investments around enterprise social will be stifled by that, or in fact just going to help because it's going to...
Yeah, certainly our experience is that demand's just accelerating. Yeah. I say this a lot, and folks always push back and say it can't be the case. But we're finding more and more it's that companies are saying, look, we're going to do this. Clearly collaboration is going to pivot around people instead of around something like a document or some other kind of artifact. we've got to have this new way of working. We're going to make the technology bet to do that well. Let's choose which way we're going to do, and it's going to be enterprise class. It's going to be global, and there.
Well,
go ahead.
Finish off,
I was
JB.
just going to say, and more and more of those conversations are about, who do I partner with to get that done well, and a lot less about the things that I think the industry still talks a lot about, like what are the specific ROIs around the specific use cases and all that. And as a result, to the degree that's happening, it's a little bit more like IM got to or email got to at some point. It's just, okay, we're clearly going to have it as a fabric. How do we get this done in the most efficient and effective way? We haven't seen many of those projects get derailed by the economy.
Okay.
If anything, in some cases, the economy is accelerating that. Let me think about it as an enterprise class thing, because I got 40 things out there across all of these different operating units, and I better now have 3.
Consolidated, correct.
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead, Alan.
I was going to say, one of the reasons I think spending is going to dramatically, either increase or at least be validated more and the ROI be validated more is that social's moving beyond just being, okay, my company needs open ways to communicate like forums and blogs and wikis. That's not what social means anymore. Social now is being integrated into the fabric of HR processes, into recruiting, into ERP systems, to content management systems, to supply chain, to your customer relationship management tools. The fact that all of these things now are being linked together either via kind of surface level like activity streams or more deeper by surfacing things on people's profiles or in project plans that are happening, that makes the CXO level person take a much more serious look at social. It's not my company needs to move to SharePoint because we need to have an internal blogging platform or a Facebook for my company. It's my company needs to invest in this because this way we can, improve our onboarding times or make sure that our sales reps have access to more resources in the company, or when our inventory systems have issues, people can help solve those problems, etc. And that's the big thing that's changed in social over the last couple of years is the verticals inside your company now all integrating together to be part of the same platform. It's no longer a whole bunch of different tools. From an end user perspective, I just have a platform. I don't care what's powering it in the background.
Good. We got about 2-3 minutes. Some feedback on Twitter, which is good. I haven't seen any question. So anything else you'd like to add, JB?
Yeah, I just think it's. I just say that it's still early days with respect to all this. I mean, I think there's a tremendous amount of focus on it. The capital markets are focused on it. Organizations are very focused on it. But it's still early in terms of how ubiquitously deployed, if you will, all of this kind of capability is. And mobile is a great case in point. I mean, Alan was talking about it earlier. The analogy I give is sort of the Feburary on the front of Car and Driver magazine back in the day, where that's how you sold the magazine. You put the Feburary on it because that's the way that everyone would pick. Nobody bought the Feburary, they bought the Ford. But similarly with mobile, enterprises are still struggling with respect to the question of how am I going to enable that appropriately. But if we can't walk in and show them an iPad solution and a Droid solution, all the rest, we can't even talk to them. Right?
That's right.
So it's still early relative to where it's all going to be, but I think getting a tremendous amount of focus, and I think it's sort of jumped the shark to the point where organizations are coming to be saying, look, I've just got to get this done.
Right. Alan, some advice to people watching on how they can go about investing perhaps in enterprise social?
Sure. You still there?
Yeah, we're here.
Sorry, I hear it's breaking up a bit, but hopefully you can hear me. So I wrote a blog post the other day that I called, taking the training wheels off of social. And basically what I meant by that is the last year or two, social's been all about sharing. And I think what's happening now and what we're going to see moving forward is social's all going to be about getting work done. And that's the biggest change in these things. It's not about, let me share a status update or a news feed or, even tell people what I'm working on. It's how do I turn my project management tools into social things where people can actually follow along and know what's happening? How do I get my reward, rank, reputation socialized inside the company? And how do I make my HR processes more social? So it's really moving from just kind of generic, low-hanging fruit of sharing to actually getting work done. Very good. That's a great thought right there. So thanks again for watching. And we're here in Denver, by the way, for a CloudFest. I think it's the very first Cloud Office 365 conference. Yep. You'll be speaking later too,
That's right? As will you, is that right?
I just finished mine.
Oh, okay,
so,
sure.
All right.
Yes, we'll do the handoff.
Good.
Yes, I'm heading over there after this. Thanks.
Good. So Alan, thank you for joining, and Ray disappeared.
You're very welcome.
I'll tell him thank you as well. But other than that, hopefully you guys enjoy this. This is recorded, so once the recording is up, we'll let everybody know. And have a great day.
Great. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Good to talk to you, Alan. Thank you.